I'm Franklin. Do you think it's possible to defeat the deep state? In Washington, the most dangerous weapon isn't a missile. It's a fountain pen. In 1964, the city was a graveyard of secrets, and everyone was busy digging. The air felt heavy, like a storm that refused to break, and the marble monuments looked more like tombstones than tributes. Elijah Vance was a man made of silence. He had spent 15 years sitting in the corners of oak-paneled rooms, his fingers dancing over the keys of a stenotype machine. He had heard generals cry, senators lie, and presidents whisper things that would turn a normal man's hair white overnight. "Elijah, you look like you've seen a ghost," Arthur, the senior clerk, whispered as they walked down a dimly lit corridor of the Dirksen building. "Just tired, Arthur. The Warren Commission files are dense," Elijah replied, clutching his leather satchel. But Elijah was lying. Inside that satchel wasn't a report. It was a single, handwritten sheet of shorthand from a closed-door dinner at the Metropolitan Club. A dinner that never officially happened. The voices on that recording, voices Elijah knew well, hadn't been talking about policy. They were talking about Project Mirror, a plan to trigger a false flag incident in the Gulf of Tonkin to drag the country into a full-scale war, all to satisfy the board members of 3 major defense contractors. "The Texas shift is complete," one voice had said. "The new man knows his place. Now, let's start the fire." Elijah reached his small apartment in Georgetown, the floorboards creaking under his feet. He locked all 3 bolts. The city outside was a grid of yellow streetlights, each one a potential lookout. He sat at his desk, the shorthand staring back at him like a hex. Then, the phone rang. Ring, ring. Elijah didn't answer. He didn't have to. The caller ID, a technology that didn't exist yet, but in DC, some people had ways to identify themselves, was blank. Just a low, rhythmic clicking on the other end of the line. Suddenly, a brick shattered his window. Tied to the brick was a Polaroid photo. It was a picture of Elijah, taken 5 minutes ago through his own window. On the back, written in neat, bureaucratic script, were 4 words: "Stop writing, start running." Elijah realized then that he wasn't just a witness anymore. He was the last piece of evidence they needed to burn. Washington, D.C. in the mid-60s was a city of facades. The white marble of the monuments was meant to blind you so you wouldn't notice the rot in the wooden foundations of the boarding houses. It was a city where men in 3-piece suits discussed the end of the world over dry martinis, and where a man's life could be traded for a single filing cabinet. Elijah Vance didn't stay in his apartment. He knew the protocol for disappearance. He took only his satchel and a snub-nosed Colt he'd kept since his days in the Signal Corps. He didn't head for the police. In D.C., the police were just the janitors who cleaned up after the big boys. Instead, he headed for the Mercury Chamber. It wasn't a real room. It was a nickname for a hidden sub-basement in the Library of Congress, a place where the air was filtered through charcoal and the only light came from flickering green desk lamps. It was the dead zone for the city's surveillance, thick lead-lined walls meant to protect the nation's most sensitive archives from Soviet electronic eavesdropping. Or so they said. "Elijah, you're not on the schedule," a voice rasped from behind a wall of index cards. It was Harlan, a man who looked like he'd been pressed between the pages of a history book. He had worked in the archives since the days of FDR, and he knew where every skeleton in the Capitol was buried. Literally. "Harlan, I need the gray folders for August 63. Everything from the Dallas-Fort Worth intelligence hub," Elijah whispered, his eyes darting to the heavy steel door. Harlan froze. "Elijah, those files don't exist. They were sterilized by Hoover's boys the week after the funeral. You're asking for a one-way ticket to a shallow grave in Arlington. They exist, Harlan, because I took the shorthand for the meeting where they ordered the sterilization. Elijah slammed the handwritten sheet onto the desk. Harlan put on his glasses. As he read the shorthand, the color drained from his face, leaving it the shade of old parchment. My God. Project Mirror. Harlan breathed. It wasn't just about the war, Elijah. Look at the names. They're not just generals. They're the heads of the Federal Reserve and the chairman of the board of Union Carbide. It was a merger of the military-industrial complex and the National Treasury. They didn't just kill a man, they hijacked the country's bank account. Suddenly, the lights in the library flickered and died. The hum of the ventilation system fell silent. In the absolute darkness of the sub-basement, the silence felt like a physical weight. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of footsteps on the metal catwalk above them. Not the soft soles of a librarian. The heavy, rhythmic thud of tactical boots. They're here, Elijah hissed. The back exit through the rare maps collection. Harlan pointed a shaky finger toward a narrow passage behind the shelves. Go, Elijah. If they get you, they get the only man who can translate that code. Elijah sprinted into the darkness. He could hear the hiss of suppressed weapons, as the shelves behind him erupted in a shower of shredded paper and dust. They weren't just trying to kill him. They were shredding the archive itself. He burst through a service door and found himself in the tunnels of the Capitol subway. The air here was damp and smelled of grease. The tracks stretched into the gloom like the ribs of a giant beast. As he ran, a voice boomed from the tunnel's PA system, distorted and haunting. Elijah Vance, you are in possession of classified material belonging to the Office of National Security. Surrender the satchel, and your family in Ohio will remain undisturbed. Elijah stopped. He didn't have a family in Ohio. His parents were dead, and he'd never married. The deep state didn't have a file on him. He realized then that they were bluffing. They didn't know everything. They only knew what he had written down. If he hadn't stenotyped it, it didn't exist in their world. He took a different turn, toward the Blue Line, the secret tunnel that connected the Capitol to the Supreme Court. There, in the shadows of a maintenance alcove, he saw her. Clara Thorne, a reporter for the Washington Post, but not the kind that wrote about galas. She was the one who investigated the accidental falls from hotel balconies. You're late, Elijah, she said, her trench coat dark with the DC rain. I have the microfilm camera. Do you have the transcript? It's more than a transcript, Clara, Elijah said, gasping for breath. It's a blueprint. Project Mirror isn't a plan for a war. It's an algorithm. They've figured out how to use the stock market to predict when to start a conflict for maximum profit. They're turning the world into a slaughterhouse for dividends. Clara's eyes widened. If we publish this, the market crashes by morning. The government will collapse. Good, Elijah growled. But as Clara reached for the satchel, Elijah noticed something. A small silver pin on her lapel. A tiny, stylized owl. The symbol of the Bohemian Grove. The secret retreat for the world's most powerful men. Elijah stepped back, his hand moving toward the Colt in his pocket. The Post doesn't use that symbol, Clara, Elijah said, his voice cold. Who are you really working for? Clara's face shifted. The hungry reporter mask fell away, replaced by the calm, chilling gaze of a professional. I'm working for the stability of the Republic, Elijah, she said. And for the first time, he noticed the silent shadows of 4 men closing in from the ends of the tunnel. Truth is a luxury the masses can't afford. Give me the bag, and I'll make sure your death is quick, unlike Harlan's. Elijah felt a cold shock. Harlan, the library is currently on fire, Elijah. A gas leak. Such a tragedy. The tunnels began to vibrate. Not from a train, but from a massive, low-frequency hum. The mercury pulse, a secret device designed to scramble any electronic recordings and, as a side effect, paralyze the nervous system of anyone within 50 yards. Elijah's vision began to blur. His knees felt like water. But he had one advantage. He was a stenographer. He didn't need electronics. He had his memory, and he had his hands. As the pulse hit him, Elijah did the one thing they didn't expect. He didn't run. He dove into the electrified third rail safety trench, using the iron and earth to ground himself, and pulled the fire alarm for the entire Capitol complex. If he was going down, he was going to wake up every politician, every tourist, and every guard in the city. The sirens began to wail, a deafening, screaming chorus that drowned out the hum of the pulse. In the chaos of the flashing red emergency lights, Elijah Vance vanished into the steam pipes, a ghost in the machine of the state. In the world of the deep state, power doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't hide in a cellar. It dines in the center of the room, smiling for the cameras while it sharpens the blade under the table. Elijah Vance emerged from the Capitol's steam tunnels smelling of sulfur, wet iron, and raw panic. His fingers were still twitching from the after effects of the mercury pulse, but his mind was a razor. He knew the rules of the city. If you run, they catch you at the station. If you hide, they find you in the cellar. The only way to survive was to walk directly into the heart of the web. The location: Old Ebbitt Grill, the oldest tavern in D.C., located just a stone's throw from the White House. Inside, the air was a thick blue fog of expensive cigar smoke and the scent of aged scotch. It was a place where history was made in the quiet clinking of silverware. There, at a corner booth in the back, sat a man who didn't exist on any official payroll, but whose name made CIA directors stand at attention: Admiral Winslow Greathouse. Officially, a retired veteran. Unofficially, the architect. Elijah sat down across from him, his soaked trench coat heavy on his shoulders. He kept his satchel on his lap, hidden beneath the tablecloth. The Admiral was slowly cutting into a rare steak, the red juices pooling on the white porcelain plate. He didn't look up. "You're late for your appointment with Clara, Elijah," Greathouse said. His voice was dry, like the sound of dead leaves scuttling over a grave. "She's a sensitive girl, and a disappointed agency operative is a very dangerous thing to have on your trail." "Your Clara is a glitch in the machine, Admiral," Elijah replied, his voice low but steady. He slid a single sheet of shorthand onto the table. "Just like your Project Mirror, you've turned democracy into a ticker tape. You've calculated the dividends of the Vietnam War before the first troop ships have even left the harbor." Greathouse finally looked up. His eyes were cold, pale, and as translucent as ice in a glass of bourbon. "Do you think you're a hero, Vance?" The Admiral set down his knife. "Do you think the world is a garden that grows on its own? It's not. It's a machine. And sometimes, to keep the machine from seizing up, you have to grease the gears with the blood of a president or 10,000 soldiers. We aren't puppet masters, Elijah. We are the engineers of reality." "Your reality is built on a foundation of corpses." Elijah leaned in. "In this bag, I have the full transcript of the dinner on November 22nd. I have the record of you discussing the trajectory of the bullets in Dallas before Oswald even took his seat in that window. If I don't walk out of here in 10 minutes, my contact sends this to 3 major European newspapers." Greathouse laughed, a soft, chilling sound that didn't reach his eyes. "European newspapers? Elijah, We own the paper mills they print on. We control the transatlantic cables that carry the signal. You're trying to fight the ocean with a paper cup." At that moment, a waiter approached. But instead of a menu, he placed a fresh evening edition of the Star in front of Elijah. The headline screamed, "Rogue stenographer wanted in capital fire." Below it was Elijah's face, looking haggard and insane. "See?" Greathouse picked up his glass. "You aren't a witness anymore. You're a domestic terrorist with a history of mental instability. No one will believe a word you say. You're a ghost, Elijah, and ghosts don't testify in court." Elijah felt a sudden, icy chill. He realized then that they weren't going to kill him in the bar. They were going to erase him. No past, no name, no future. But the architect had made one fatal mistake. He had underestimated the professional habits of a man who listens for a living. Elijah reached into his pocket. Greathouse didn't move. He was too arrogant to feel threatened. But Elijah didn't pull a gun. He pulled out a tiny, nearly invisible hearing aid he used for recording long-distance depositions. "You know, Admiral," Elijah said softly, "I modified this back in the Signal Corps. It doesn't just amplify sound, it broadcasts." Greathouse froze. His eyes flicked to the bar. Sitting there, among the lobbyists and tourists, was a man in headphones who slowly nodded to Elijah. He wasn't a journalist. He wasn't a Fed. He was a Soviet attaché from the embassy on 16th Street. "You control the American papers," Elijah continued, his voice hardening. "Novy ne kontroliruete Radio Moscow. In 5 minutes, your monologue about greasing the gears will be broadcasted to every listening post from here to Vladivostok. And once it's out there, your friends in the Senate will have to sacrifice you just to save their own skins." The color drained from Greathouse's face. For the first time, the engineer of reality was staring at a blueprint he hadn't designed. You have no idea what you've done," the Admiral hissed. "You've just triggered a catastrophic leak. You've compromised the entire structure." "No," Elijah stood up, clutching his satchel. "I just turned the lights on in your theater, and everyone knows that puppet masters hate the spotlight." Elijah walked out of the old Ebbett Grill and into the rainy D.C. night. He knew he would be running forever. He knew his life was now a series of shadows and fake names. But for the first time in 15 years, he wasn't just recording history. He was making it. They say the truth will set you free. In Washington, that's the biggest lie of all. The truth won't set you free. It'll just make you a target in a world that prefers the comfort of a well-crafted fiction. Elijah Vance didn't become a hero. He didn't stand before a congressional committee to thunderous applause. By the time the Soviet attaché reached the embassy, the frequency Elijah had been broadcasting on was filled with nothing but high-decibel white noise. The mercury pulse hadn't just scrambled his electronics. It had been a signal for a complete digital and physical sanitization. 3 days after the meeting at Old Ebbett Grill, a small blurb appeared on page 14 of the Washington Post. It reported that a disturbed former clerk had been found in a motel room in Virginia. The cause of death was listed as a self-inflicted barbiturate overdose. No satchel was found, no shorthand notes remained. Admiral Greathouse didn't fall. He didn't even lose his dinner reservation. He simply retired a year later, receiving a Medal of Freedom in a private ceremony at the White House, a reward for decades of invisible service to the stability of the Republic. Project Mirror didn't stop either. It just changed its name. It moved from dusty basements into the hum of early mainframe computers. The algorithm for profitable conflict became the silent heartbeat of the American economy, a ghost in the machine that ensures the gears keep turning, fueled by the very blood Greathouse had joked about. As for the recording, it exists. Somewhere in the deep archives of the Kremlin, there is a spool of magnetic tape labeled "The Stenographer's Ghost." But it was never broadcast. The Soviets didn't want to destroy the American deep state. They wanted to negotiate with it. They kept the tape as leverage, a secret handshake between two monsters who realized they needed each other to keep the world in a state of profitable fear. Elijah Vance thought he could turn on the lights. He forgot that when you turn on the lights in a room full of shadows, the shadows don't disappear. They just move behind you.